Hello, everyone. Today we're taking a journey through the pages of the book Griftopia, Bubble Machines, Vampire Squids, and the Long Con that is Breaking America by Matt Taibbi. Let's start with the 2008 presidential campaign, a time when the air was thick with tension and the nation was deeply divided. Matt Taibbi was there, in the thick of it, covering the Republican National Convention in St. Paul, Minnesota. He witnessed the rise of Sarah Palin, a figure who would become emblematic of a new kind of political strategy. Palin's speech was a masterclass in rallying a very specific demographic. The "we" she spoke to was a group defined by its grievances, its sense of being overlooked and disrespected by the elites. It was a speech that tapped into a deep well of resentment and frustration, and it was delivered with a charisma that was both captivating and, as Taibbi notes, unsettling. But here's the kicker. While Palin was busy rallying her base, the American economy was on the brink of collapse. The financial disaster that would soon unfold was something that most Americans, including Taibbi himself, knew nothing about. The signs were there. The collapse of Bear Stearns, the free fall of Lehman Brothers. But the campaign press corps was too busy chasing scandals and sound bites to notice the real story. And that's a powerful indictment of American journalism. Now let's talk about the financial crisis itself. Taibbi paints a picture of a massive Ponzi scheme centered around the American real estate market. It was a bubble of investment fraud that floated the economy for years, fueled by reckless gambling and a complete disregard for the consequences. The key players in this scheme were the investment banks, who bundled up risky mortgages and sold them off as AAA-rated securities. These securities were then snapped up by pension funds, insurance companies, and other institutional investors, all of whom were misled about the true nature of the investments. One of the most shocking revelations in the book is the role of the ratings agencies. These agencies, which were supposed to provide independent assessments of the risk associated with these securities, were essentially in cahoots with the banks. They gave glowing ratings to bundles of subprime mortgages, even when the underlying loans were of dubious quality. This was a key factor in the crisis, as it allowed the banks to offload their risky assets onto unsuspecting investors. But the real villain of the piece, according to Taibbi, is Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the Federal Reserve. Greenspan's policies of low interest rates and deregulation created the perfect environment for the bubble to grow. He was a true believer in the power of the free market, and he used his position to push for policies that benefited the financial industry at the expense of everyone else. His legacy is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the perils of ideological blindness. And then there's the story of AIG, the insurance giant that was at the heart of the crisis. AIG's financial products division, run by the enigmatic Joseph Cassano, was selling billions of dollars worth of credit default swaps, essentially insurance policies on the mortgage-backed securities. The problem was, AIG didn't have the money to cover these bets. When the housing market collapsed, AIG was left holding the bag, and the government was forced to step in with a massive bailout. But here's where things get really interesting. Taibbi reveals that the bailout of AIG was not just about saving the company. It was also about bailing out the banks that were AIG's counterparties, including Goldman Sachs. The government essentially used taxpayer money to pay off AIG's debts to these banks, effectively transferring the risk from the private sector to the public. It was a move that highlighted the cozy relationship between Wall Street and the government, and it raised serious questions about who was really being protected. And let's not forget the role of the sovereign wealth funds, the giant, foreign state-owned investment vehicles that have been buying up American infrastructure. Thanks to the commodities bubble, which was fueled by speculative trading, oil-rich nations like Qatar and the United Arab Emirates have amassed enormous wealth. They've used this wealth to buy up everything from highways to parking meters, effectively becoming landlords of American public assets. This is a trend that has profound implications for American sovereignty and raises important questions about the long-term consequences of selling off our national treasures. Now let's talk about the aftermath. The financial crisis led to a wave of reforms, including the Dodd-Frank Act, which was supposed to rein in the excesses of Wall Street. But as Taibbi points out, the reforms were often watered down or undermined by industry lobbyists. The result is a system that is still deeply flawed, with too-big-to-fail banks continuing to dominate the financial landscape. But perhaps the most chilling part of the book is the way it exposes the deep-seated corruption and self-serving nature of the political and financial elite. Taibbi argues that the American political system has been hijacked by a small group of powerful interests who use their influence to enrich themselves at the expense of the public. It's a sobering reminder of the challenges we face as a nation and the urgent need for reform. So there you have it, folks. Griftopia is a book that will leave you both outraged and enlightened. It's a call to action, a plea for Americans to wake up and demand better from their leaders. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop me a line, leave a comment, and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. This has been a BrightLearn video from BrightLearn.ai on the book Griftopia, Bubble Machines, Vampire Squids, and the Long Con That Is Breaking America by Matt Taibbi. Visit BrightLearn.ai for more fascinating videos like this one, and naturalnews.com for full editorial coverage and breaking news on critical stories that keep you informed and aware of what's really going on.